Good morning, afternoon, and evening. I'm Callista Kirk, and welcome to the Carrying the Banner podcast, where we discuss the variety of ways that musicals can be used to educate and raise awareness throughout the community. Let's jump right in. Today we are going to be discussing musicals that battle with the universal theme of coming of age. These productions feature characters learning how to navigate the complicated world of relationships, popularity, and friendship for the first time. The three musicals I have chosen to focus on today are Be More Chill by the two Joes, Joe Iconis and Joe Triggs, 13 by Jason Robert Brown, and Spring Awakening by Steven Sater and Duncan Sheik. As always, a playlist of the music discussed will be linked to this episode for your listening pleasure. Be More Chill first debuted in New Jersey in 2015, and although not transferred to Broadway, the musical was a massive hit, especially among young people who found the catchy music and relatable, funny lyrics a thing of particular magnificence. After 4 years of pleading from fans who longed for the musical to be revived and given a chance with the big leagues of Broadway, the show reopened off-Broadway in 2018, and at the time of this podcast being recorded in February of 2019, it is being transferred to Broadway for the 2019 to 2020 season. As a precaution, this musical does include references to sensitive topics such as depression, anxiety, and high schoolers watching pornographic videos. I believe these topics are included to paint a picture of 20th century high schoolers, both as they are honestly and who they are trying to be. Alright, bear with me for this next part. I'm going to try to summarize what is a totally bizarre and comedically impossible musical with as much seriousness and composure as possible. Here we go. Be More Chill is the story of Jeremy Here, who feels like his life has no meaning. The girl he doesn't like doesn't reciprocate his feelings, his father, who he lives with, has slipped into a funk of unproductive depression after his recent divorce, and he constantly gets bullied at school. His best friend Michael is the only constant good in his life, but when Jeremy discovers what is essentially a pill that makes him popular, Jeremy ditches his best friend for the promise of having a meaningful life, or more so, he'll be liked by the popular people at his school. As you would expect, this backfires on him. The pill, called the Squip, takes over and completely rewires his brain. This is visualized on stage by another actor following Jeremy around as he speaks the thoughts of the reprogrammed brain. In the process, Michael, Jeremy's best friend, is left alone to be bullied and pushed to the bottom of the high school food chain by himself. Without spoiling the ending, a nearly apocalyptic disaster takes place due to the Squips taking control of the student body, but Michael is able to save them all through how he avoided the pill, understanding that popularity is not the most important thing in the world. Through this complicated, hilarious, and somewhat awkward plot, the value of Michael and Jeremy's friendship is emphasized, as well as a variety of other themes as the story goes on, including bisexuality, shelter found in the arts, anxiety, and the importance of just being kind to one another, especially in the harsh environment of high school. One of the most powerful songs in this production is Michael in the Bathroom, a modern musical soliloquy where Michael laments about the way that his social anxiety and isolation has increased as Jeremy has left him for the popular crowd. As he locks himself in the bathroom at what he calls the biggest party of the fall, he assesses the way that having his best friend leave him has negatively affected him, further emphasizing the idea that the never-ending pursuit for popularity not only damages the person pursuing this false paradise, but also those they are leaving behind and stepping on to get there. In the climax of the song, people at the party are banging on the bathroom door, wanting to get in, and just as Michael composes himself, splashing water in his face, drying his eyes, the people just walk away. This is a direct reflection of the way that Michael thinks that no one truly cares enough to worry about him. It is a powerful song with a powerful meaning, and it's beautifully sung. Be More Chill is great for the teenage years, as young people are trying to find themselves as students and functioning human beings. The target audience, in my opinion, is early high schoolers or people transferring into freshman year of high school. Themes of feeling accepted and the value of a good friendship are crucial to the development that is undergoing at this time. The 2015 original off-Broadway cast recording is on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music. There is also an original Broadway cast recording for the 2019 production in the works. This production will be on Broadway at the time of this podcast being recorded in February of 2019, with a different cast than the original off-Broadway cast, but nevertheless extremely talented. The 2015 original off-Broadway cast recording is on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music for your listening pleasure. There is also an original Broadway cast recording for the 2019 production coming very soon. This production will be in NYC at the time of this podcast being recorded, which is in February of 2019. Be More Chill manages to be super funny and super honest to the experiences and struggles of adolescence, and I would urge you to listen to it or see it performed however possible. Alright, that's Be More Chill for you. Moving on to 13 by Jason Robert Brown. 13 had its first preview in 2008 and then opened on Broadway later that year. For a cast of 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, this was a major deal. Though its success during its run was limited, it closed 4 months later, the legacy of the musical continues today because of various productions by local theater companies and schools where teenagers are able to play themselves as they were or are in middle school. This show is not considerably well known in the theater community, much less society as a whole. The farthest it got to an international success was its production in Canada in 2017. But, to bait you in, it is the musical that gave pop sensation Ariana Grande, who played Charlotte in the original Broadway cast, her start in show business. The subject matter in this musical is not particularly sensitive and is acceptable enough for the average middle schooler and beyond. The storyline is like this. As Evan Goldman moves from the Big Apple to Appleton, Indiana, he is forced to cope with finding his way in a new school with seemingly no friends. As if this isn't difficult enough, his bat mitzvah and 13th birthday are quickly approaching, and he is struggling with what it means to truly be a man. He confronts bullies, loses friends, and gains new ones. He moves through the strict middle school hierarchy and gets rumors spread about him, and more. This musical serves as both a beacon of hope for those 13-year-olds who are not sure who they are or who they want to be, and it tells them that it is okay not to know what you're doing, and that they have to help those who also don't know. It is also a message to people older than them, that these kids are trying their best, but middle school is a complicated and stressful time, not primarily academically, but also mentally and socially. A song that I think sums up the themes in this musical is the final number, A Little More Homework, where all ensemble members and leads stand on stage and proclaim how 13, the age, has changed them and been an important landmark in their growing up, but also to explain how much of their life is left and how they cannot rush this moment. The repeated lines are, I am trying to follow, I am trying to lead, I am trying to learn what is true. I am trying to be what you want and I need, but we all have a little more homework to do. I think I will let that speak for itself, so let those lines sink in a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, this musical is made by and for people in their early teenage years, but it can also be used to give insight into this time for people who have not yet reached that age or are out of touch with it in this modern era. The original Broadway cast recording is available on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube for your listening pleasure. As far as actually seeing a performance, there is currently no production on tour or on Broadway, but there could possibly be a school or theater company in your community that has or has thought about putting on a production of the musical. If this is true, I would encourage you to encourage them to bring this show to life in all its glory in your community. If not, the original Broadway cast recording is always a great listen. And that's it for 13 the Musical, moving on to Spring Awakening. Spring Awakening is based on the 1891 German play of the same name. Though its musical debut was not until decades later, the concepts that were discussed in the 19th century are still being talked about on stage in the 21st. Spring Awakening debuted on Broadway in 2006 after a successful off-Broadway run. The Broadway production was nominated for 11 Tony Awards, along with multiple Drama Desk, Louise Lortel, and Drama League Awards. The original Broadway cast album also won the Best Musical Theater Album Grammy. After multiple international and national tours, just when people thought the heat of the production was dying down, it was revived on Broadway through Deaf West Theater, a company that brings deaf or hard-of-hearing performers to center stage to play the roles while the songs are being sung by what they call voice actors and actresses. This was a massive hit, both from a musical standpoint and for representation within the industry. The revival went on to be nominated for 15 Ovation Awards, 3 Tonys, and 4 Drama Desk Awards, among many other recognitions. This show brought the newfound success and led to more tours and more international openings. As a warning, this production does have major sexual themes, as it is essentially the point of the musical, which I will explain soon, but in a way that explores the naivety of students learning about and navigating through their bodies for the first time. It also discusses mental health and suicide to a considerable extent, so if that is a sensitive subject, I advise that this musical may be difficult to listen to. There is also some explicit language, but I think that just furthers the mentality of teenagers during this point in time. The setting of this musical is the same as the 1891 play that it is based on. Germany at a time when sex and sexuality were not discussed by families, and especially not with teenagers. The musical seeks to emphasize why shielding adolescents from the truths of love and lust can be damaging not only to the teenagers, but all of those involved. This is portrayed by a student getting pregnant, an unsafe abortion, a character realizing they are queer, and more. This musical also touches on topics such as abuse, which was not talked about during the time period. This leads to several characters being harassed by their parents, sexually, physically, and emotionally, and therefore believing they cannot talk to anyone about it. The confessions of these characters come out in the song The Dark I Know Well, where a chorus of abused teenagers sing an angry, guilty, and intimidating song that unites their experiences while not letting anyone be left out. They stare straight in the audience while they sing, allowing viewers to be called out to look at what abuse they have been ignoring in their community. Educational pressures are also discussed throughout the production as various students lament about feeling like they will never be good enough for their teachers' and parents' expectations. This leads to a character taking their own life, resulting in teachers pushing the guilt onto the deceased in order to take it off themselves. This ties into the conversations that are sparked about mental health and mental illnesses. The musical seeks to bring awareness to the various facets of adolescence that can trigger damage in teenagers' mental health. These include all the topics previously discussed: sexuality, abuse, educational pressures, and more. In the song "And Then There Were None," a character reaches out for help in the form of a friend's mother, and his claims about wanting to take his own life are dismissed as not a serious concern. This is a direct jab at the discretion that taints discussion about mental health, especially in today's society. These various themes and concepts are brought to life by a cast of characters with a variety of personal, mental, and familial problems. The story told in Spring Awakening shows the diversity of struggles throughout teenagers everywhere and how we, as a society, must be able to address them and talk about them before it goes too far. This musical is made especially for people right in the middle of their teenage years. This demographic of people benefit greatly from seeing their struggles, questions, and developments directly on stage or hearing them portrayed through beautiful lyrics in a cast recording. There is also an audience for this musical with people who are older and looking at these struggles, questions, and developments as through the lens of their children, for parents, or students as teachers or educators. Either way, the musical brings to light the period in every person's life that society tries to neglect talking about. The original Broadway cast recording can be found on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music for your listening pleasure. At the time of this musical being recorded, there is currently no production in the United States of this musical. Well, that's it for episode 2 of the Carrying the Banner podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Callista Kirk. I hope you look into some of these weirdly relatable and relevant musicals. I'll see you in episode 3 where we discuss LGBTQ+ representation and celebration in musicals. This episode was written and recorded by me, Callista Kirk, and produced by Steve Baldwin and myself. It is part of the Figure 8 podcast network. That's Figure with an 8, so you can find us there. You can follow the podcast on Twitter @PodcastCTB, on Instagram @CarryingTheBannerPod, or on Facebook by searching Carrying the Banner Podcast. We are happy to hear your feedback, and that is also where the episode playlists will be linked for you, with a highlight reel from each musical mentioned in the episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.